It's Monday, February 6th. Welcome to the News Diet. Today, I'm going to talk about the Chinese spy balloon that flew across the country all last week. I'll go over what exactly happened, the praise and criticisms over how officials handled the situation, and also what this means for the ongoing tensions between the U.S. and China. Let's be informed so we can get on with our day. As a little disclaimer, I do currently have COVID right now, so apologies if I do seem a little under the weather. I'm totally fine, but if you're interested in a way to help me feel better, then how you can do that is by hitting that subscribe button. Seriously, it'll make me feel so much better, and you'll be informed about all the new episodes coming out every couple days. It's a win-win. Late last week, a story that seemed to come out of the blue and capture the nation's attention was the discovery of a Chinese-derived spy balloon found in American airspace and its very public journey across the country. The balloon, which is said to be about the size of 3 buses, is said to have first entered American airspace on January 28th in Alaska before moving into Canadian airspace in the Northwest Territories for a day until re-entering back into the U.S. on Tuesday through Idaho, which is when U.S. Pentagon officials really started to take notice. You see, by Wednesday, the balloon had made it to Billings, Montana, which is just a couple hundred miles away from the Malmstrom Air Force Base, which is just one of 3 U.S. Air Force bases that hold and operate intercontinental ballistic missiles. Immediately, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin called a meeting with senior defense officials to review the situation. I'll talk about the ongoing U.S.-China relations in a bit and why this is an especially sensitive situation at an especially sensitive time, but I will note here that what made these military discussions particularly delicate was that Secretary of State Antony Blinken had a visit to China scheduled for just a couple days later. And the purpose behind the visit was ironically to try to ease U.S.-China relations. So the timing was pretty awkward. Reportedly, this day was filled with back and forths between American and Chinese diplomats in addition to the discussions among military officials. Ultimately, the call was made to cancel the trip. Also, the decision was made to shoot down the balloon. At this point on Wednesday, civilian eyewitnesses were starting to spot the balloon, and word spread quickly. The Billings airport in Montana was put under a ground stop, so it wasn't exactly concealed at this point. So on Thursday, the Pentagon held a conference confirming the situation.
While we won't get into specifics in regards to the exact location, I can tell you that the balloon continues to move eastward and is currently over the center of the continental United States. Again, we currently assess that the balloon does not present a military or physical threat to people on the ground at this time, and we'll continue to monitor and review options.
So the decision was made to shoot down the balloon, but officials wanted to wait until it reached over water in order to minimize the risk of human or infrastructure damage from the debris. So with the balloon following the jet stream to the east, the Navy and the Coast Guard were put on standby just outside the South Carolina coast. It was shot down 6 miles from land after an F-22 fighter jet fired an air missile, which was caught on civilian cameras for all to see. Once the debris hit the water, military divers began the recovery efforts. Reportedly, the waters weren't considered terribly deep, so the efforts aren't expected to be too difficult other than maybe the really cold temperatures. The recovered debris is expected to head to federal intelligence and law enforcement agencies. Before talking about the potential geopolitical implications of this saga, let's talk about this balloon. According to the New York Times, China has developed a fleet of these balloons, whose purpose is to surveil, the world, presumably. These balloons have been spotted in countries across 5 continents, and in fact, another balloon was spotted at the same time over Latin America. According to Intelligencer, it was over Costa Rica on Friday, and then Saturday, Colombia confirmed its presence. However, they let it pass through, and the current location is unknown. Apparently, at least one balloon appeared under Trump's term as well, although he's denied it. And Fox reported that one crashed off the coast of Hawaii just 4 months ago. So what's actually attached to these balloons? They're supposedly equipped with propulsions powered by solar panels, as well as cameras and other surveillance technology. They're not believed to include any weaponry or any other devices intended to cause physical harm. In terms of how much intelligence was gathered from the balloon, officials are saying it likely didn't capture much, not more than what could be seen from a spy satellite. But even though the device was shot down, the incident is still garnering criticism from some in Washington. Some are wondering how the balloon was able to make it so far into American airspace unnoticed for so long, and others are questioning the decision to allow it to span across the entire country before shooting it down. Congressman Matt Rosendale, who represents the Montana city where the story started to unfold, said, quote, "Now that China has gathered information about our infrastructure and military for over a week, we finally bring the balloon down." And Louisiana Republican Mike Johnson shared similar sentiments by saying the balloon, quote, "should have been removed as soon as it crossed into U.S. territory days ago. This fiasco was as dangerous to our national security as it was unacceptable. The American people deserve answers." And then Speaker Kevin McCarthy said, quote, "First Biden refused to defend our borders, now he won't defend our skies." But on the other side of the aisle, Democrats are largely praising the handling of the situation, with most criticisms directed at China instead. Senator Chuck Schumer said, quote, "I strongly condemn President Xi's brazen incursion into American airspace, and I commend President Biden's leadership in taking down the Chinese balloon over water to ensure safety for all Americans. Now we can collect the equipment and analyze the technology used by the CCP." As for China's response, they're claiming that the balloon was a civilian weather research balloon that flew off course and accidentally ended up in American airspace. The statement on their government website said, "The airship is from China. It was a civilian airship used for research, mainly meteorological purposes. Affected by the westerlies and then with limited self-steering capability, the airship deviated far from its planned course. The Chinese side regrets the unintended entry of the airship into U.S. airspace due to force majeure. The Chinese side will continue communicating with the U.S. side and properly handle this unexpected situation caused by force majeure." This excuse, though, isn't being bought by American leadership, with most chalking it up to just saving face. There is one fun fact about this excuse, though. Business Insider pointed out that in 1957, this was the same claim that America made when a U.S. balloon was found and shot down over China. I have no idea if there's any real connection here, or if it's simply a coincidence, but I did think that was interesting. Anyway, Beijing is essentially claiming that the U.S. is overblowing this and creating something out of nothing. Now, this whole thing doesn't really bode well for the U.S.-China relations. The two world superpowers have had a particularly delicate relationship recently. Between trade interests, regime differences, cultural differences, there's no shortage of matters at play here. So any little step towards co-alignment is always considered a good thing, but any sign of additional conflict just adds to the already tense rivalry. Here's some of the current events still unfolding between the two countries right now. First, we have the ongoing trade wars. The trade relationship here now has roots several decades old, so they're deep. I mean, it doesn't take an expert in international economics to recognize how much of what we consume is imported from China. Consumer electronics, IT hardware, semiconductors, clothing, furniture. At this point, it's almost impossible to find products not utilizing a Chinese-made component in some way. Sure, this allows us to manufacture some products for cheaper, but that becomes an issue when that flow of supply gets interrupted in some way, like we experienced during the pandemic when Chinese leadership chose to enact the relentless zero-COVID policy. And then this brings us to our inherent differences between the Chinese Communist Party and the Democratic West. There's major fundamental differences in terms of government control and freedom. In China, there's ramifications for speaking out against the government, internet censorship, government-mandated lockdowns, I mean, the US did that too, child-rearing controls, and mass surveillance. Again, that might not just be China. So there's inherent polarity that the economic behemoths have to navigate. Then there's the geopolitical events around the world that the US and China don't always find themselves in alignment with. The US has obviously sided against Russia's actions against Ukraine, where China's remained more open-minded to the Kremlin. And then, of course, there's the will they, won't they speculation on if China will take similar action in Taiwan. And then there's human rights criticisms as well. well. Lots of reports coming out of China regarding Uyghur Muslim containment camps, mysterious disappearances of political critics like billionaire businessman Jack Ma and tennis star Peng Shuai, and also the crackdowns of freedoms in Hong Kong. So all this to say that any additional tensions between the two powers isn't great. This balloon incident definitely doesn't help matters, but we'll have to see to what extent it actually hurts them. Let me know your thoughts below in the comments. Is this a new significant hurdle to progress, or is it a minor setback in what's already a long list of issues to navigate? You've just been informed, so now it's time to get on with your day. I'm Michelle Carroll. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode and want to continue following a healthier alternative for staying informed, where I forgo partisan fighting and fear-driven narratives and just get to the point, then please be sure to hit that subscribe button, as of course you'll get more of this show in your feed, and also you'll be helping this new channel grow and reject sensational media. Thank you so much for your support, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode.